Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to the program. This is Daily Politics on Trust TV. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. Thank you most kindly for joining us. Tonight, we'll hear what CG Musa plans to do for Nigeria as he steps into his new role as Defense Minister, soon to be formally sworn into office. He says terror groups won't get room to regroup, as he also plans to review troop withdrawal that led to the abduction of Kebbi schoolgirls, as well as the killing of a brigade commander by ISWAP operatives in the northeast region. Retired Major General Umar Muhammed will be joining the conversation tonight to help us understand what this square peg in the square hole means for Nigeria's security architecture and what CG Musa is bringing to the table as far as outcomes are concerned. Before we get to the conversation, let's first bring you up to speed with developments in the polity.
Prohibition Act and classify kidnapping, hostage-taking, and related crimes as terrorist acts has passed second reading at the Senate. The Senate has confirmed Christopher Musa as Minister of Defense. During screening, he vowed to probe the withdrawal of troops before the attack on Government Comprehensive Girls Secondary School, Maga, and to set up a panel on the killing of Brigadier General Musa Obam. The central bank has introduced new withdrawal limits and removed the cumulative deposit cap. The circular issued on December 2, 2025, said the changes aim to cut cash management costs, improve security, and reduce money laundering risks in an economy still dependent on cash. Daniel Bwala, Special Advisor to President Bola Tinubu on Policy Communication, says the federal government does not negotiate with terrorists. He told Channels Television that the complexity of the security situation sometimes forces leaders to take difficult decisions.
Part of some of the day's biggest stories there, a recap for you. Let's segue back to our conversation this evening, which is another look at that 5-hour screening at the Nigerian Senate today for the immediate past Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, retired, who is now set to become the next Minister of Defense for Nigeria. A lot of issues were brought to bear in those screening questions from the Nigerian senators, as well as some of his take on what needs to change, what he's bringing to the table, his commitment, as well as his pledge to do the needful to bring safety, security of lives and property for Nigeria and indeed Nigerians. Well, let's speak to someone who understands some of the language, some of the existing issues regarding Nigeria's battle, long-term battle, I might add, with insecurity. Join us on the program tonight is retired Major General Muhammed to provide some context regarding some of the issues that have come to light and the journey that lies ahead for Nigeria's next Minister of Defense. General, good to see you again. Thank you so much for stopping by this evening.
Good to see you too.
Right, your initial impression of the 5-hour screening exercise at the Nigerian Senate, perhaps one of the longest, if not the longest screening exercises that we've seen in recent history. Usually these screenings happen behind closed doors because of the nature of the security, but the Senate insisted that, listen, these issues are germane, Nigerians are concerned about it, and they don't think we're doing enough in terms of questioning the developments that is happening. So they had an open conversation about what he's bringing to the table, what the issues are. What do you make of what happened in plenary today?
Okay, let me start by saying that thank you very much for having me. I would like to state that if Nigeria does not kill insecurity, insecurity has the capacity, can be able to kill Nigeria. It can be able to lead to the disintegration of Nigeria as a country. Therefore, there is need for the government to actually take security seriously. And as we have said, appointing CG Musa into to be the Minister of Defense is actually bringing a square peg into a square hole. He is coming into the job, you can see, with knowledge, experience, exposure. He has and not only that, that is what stands him out from the civilians that were on that post, in the sense that beside knowing the military operations, he has attended several courses, he has held several offices, including being the highest military officer in the land. That means chief of defense staff. So based on that, he's coming into the office with a lot of knowledge and experience. And I think if he takes it, not only that, he has a connection with the officers and soldiers in the entire length and breadth of the country. Now, the conversation was quite good in the sense that they have asked him on so many issues, and he has actually replied them. Some of the key things he mentioned is the issue of the fact that defense is quite expensive. As he stated, what people don't know, this is why when I hear people crying that we're spending so much, I begin to wonder, because they don't know how expensive defense is. You can hear there is a missile that costs $100,000, which is 150 million naira. Now, this is why I'm saying that there are so many, and he has actually, and I can tell you that this is why you can look at the fact that beside what he's bringing, and he has also said that he is going to have, is going to be community driven. And he's also going to make use of technology. Now let me go back to what happened to General Uba. General Uba was going on a patrol, and he was ambushed. In the 21st century, ambushing a brigadier general. And I could, you can go back to, recently there were some interactions in the Senate in which they were discussing whether does the military have satellite or it doesn't. And at that time, Opabio was saying that we have a military-grade satellite. And Ndume said we don't have. And the truth is that we don't have. And that is why you could see
the Nigerian military does not have satellite capabilities.
You see, when you say satellite capability, you see, yes, we don't have satellite capability, but that doesn't mean we don't have surveillance and reconnaissance equipment. But when you say satellite, we don't have. And this is why you can see that it's actually the United States that has been assisting us with some satellite images and satellite information. This is why I'm just telling you that so many of the problems we're having, some of the field, because this is why, as the brigade commander was moving, he was blind. His front was blind. He didn't know what was in his front. And this is why you could see that some insurgents used to attack our locations, you know, and they achieved surprise because of this lack of satellite. Right. So this is why my belief is that with his presence as the Minister of Defense, because he knows some of our deficiencies, some of our inadequacies as an army, I'm sure if you should be able to bring them forward to the president, and if the executive is able to address some of them, that will be a good one.
Right. You could tell that while the screening was going on, some of his responses online, you see the comment section, a lot of people impressed by his intellect, his understanding of the issues. It's safe to say that he has talked the talk, but can he walk the talk, which is the most important part? What is realistically going to happen in your view? Because it's not just about the individual, it's also about the system. How much do we budget? How much get released? What about the red tapes that exist? Because he's now an administrator.
This is why you have actually hit the nail on the head, that he alone cannot do it. And he stated it there, that he wants to have an administration that is going to be community-led. And he said, security is everybody's business. You are very correct that he may have the knowledge, he may know the problems, he may know the requirements. If the government does not give him the wherewithal to have the required manpower, the required equipment that should be able to turn the tide and change the rhythm in the battlefield, I think things will remain unchanged. So my prayer is that I pray that the government should give him all the support, because I know him very well. I have worked with him. I have interacted with him several times while in the army. We served in the same in Chief of Army Staff's office at the Stitch. I know he's very intelligent, hardworking, very detailed and organized, and he can be very determined when it comes to achieving goals. So I'm sure if he brings some of these his positive qualities, or some of these his positive attributes to his own work, and if he gets the support of the National Assembly and the presidency, I can see that we should be able to have we should be able to see that we should record some successes.
And talk to me about some of his points of view, which are not necessarily new. Some of the things that he re-echoed in the Senate chambers were things he said as CDS. His concerns about Nigeria's porous borders. He re-echoed that same sentiment today. Some of his take on collaboration, some of his takes on a variety of issues around what is happening region by region, the banditry problem, the problems we're having with ISWAP, Boko Haram, and all the other issues across the theater. What does that tell you about how the problem necessarily, the diagnosis is not the problem, but actually what we do to it? The prognosis is where the problem is. So that there's a very good chance that some people say there's a very good chance that he could meet the same stumbling blocks that he met as CDS in his new role as minister.
You see, yeah, you're very correct that, for instance, some of the key impediments that are actually been an impediment to the conduct of successful operations in the country includes the influx of small arms and light weapons. And this is because of the porous borders we have. We have more than 4,047 kilometers of borders with other countries. And we know that weapons are coming in, and criminals are also coming in from other places to this country. And as you're very correct that I can see, you know, his role now has changed. He has actually moved into the civilian sector. He is part of the government now, being a minister. That means he can directly represent the army in the presidency by saying this is what he needs to do, this is what he requires. So, to me, the question is that, for instance, those who are civilians, they may not know the problems. They need to be briefed. They need to be made to understand the problems. But for him, he knows our problems. He knows the possible solutions to our problems.
But isn't knowing the problem just half of the issue here? I mean, solving the problem is basically the main issue that we've been dealing with.
This is why I say, being somebody who I know him to be very tactful. And he knows how to get himself, he's somebody who's very affable, who can be able to convince people. So I am of the belief that he can be able to convince the government, of which he is a member, to be able to provide the required logistics and other supports that are required for us to excel in the operations we are conducting.
Well, you consider the role of Minister of Defense. A lot of civilians, especially in the Fourth Republic, have held that position. I think they're almost at par with past military generals who took on that role at one point or the other in past administrations. How instrumental is this position in the grand scheme of things? Because we know that the one who has the final say is the president, who is the commander-in-chief of the Nigerian Armed Forces. As minister, how much can we realistically expect him to do?
Well, you see, this is why you're very correct that here in the minister actually administers. Well, the command of the armed forces rests with the president-in-chief, and it is exercised on his behalf by the service chiefs. So in other words, in the chain of command, you don't have the chief of defense staff and the minister of defense in the chain of command. That means the president can just give orders to the service chiefs. And I think some people have the view that maybe there could be need for some changes in constitutional rules of the minister. But nonetheless, I can tell you that in his own case, because of the fact that most of the service chiefs now, all the service chiefs are his subordinates in the army. He knows them, they know him. And we have some level of... so this is why it's easier for him to relate with them. And I can tell you that he can be able to pass orders to them. And because being their senior in the military, the way they will take it is going to be different from the way they will take it if he happens to be a civilian. They will respect the civilian, but the question is that we actually respect people more. We actually respect our colleagues more
Right.
Because of the fact that we know that they know the level of training we have, and I think in the military he has quite a good following, because
I think that respect would count for something.
Yeah, it will count a lot.
Okay, let's hear from the horse's mouth some of the takes of the soon-to-be Minister of Defense, who has just been confirmed by the Nigerian Senate, General Christopher Musa, during the screening earlier in the day at the Nigerian Senate. Let's have a listen to some of his thoughts about what he's bringing to the table.
The issue of kidnapping of students, very unfortunate. But I think since last year, the Safe School initiative was carried out. I think we need to look at it critically and make sure that it is holistic in its approach. Now, we must build the resilience of our communities, because crime is localized. We're able to build the capacity of the locals themselves to be the first responder, because when they come, since security agencies cannot be everywhere, it's good we build them. Our schools must be secured. You see, most of the schools that have been built, you go and visit them, no perimeter fence, they are left exposed. Information conveyance, again, has been an issue. Before these informations are relayed, the use of technology. So, sir, we're going to make sure that we do a whole of society approach into addressing this issue of kidnapping of school. With technology, working together with the armed forces, the police and other security agencies, and the communities. I think that's where the gap has been. We will be able to address that properly, and we'll be able to also secure these children and to stop issues of kidnapping all over the country. In our neighboring countries, Cameroon, Chad, Niger, Benin Republic, we need to also reach out to them, because if they're able to secure their own borders, it means our own borders will be secured. If theirs is porous, ours is going to be porous. And because we have more to lose, the terrorists that we're dealing with think Nigeria is so rich that when they come to Nigeria, they can make it. So anything they are doing anywhere, their target, end state, is to come into Nigeria. And that's why it's important that we must make sure that we secure our borders and deny them the entry. And then those ones that are within, we're able to take them out. I think one basic area we're also going to look at is accountability of the armed forces. Whatever funds has been made, we want to make sure that the funds are properly utilized.
Part of his submissions at the Nigerian Senate earlier in the day during his ministerial screening, answering questions about what needs to be done differently, effectively, to bring about the much-needed results that Nigerians have been demanding for the last 1.5 decades, if not more, regarding operations to restore law and order in much of Nigeria today, whether it's the north central, northeast, northwest, or in the southern part of the country where insecurity has become a new normal now. Thoughts of the incoming Minister of Defense, who has just been confirmed by the Nigerian Senate. General, talk to me about, some of the things that he said. There are people who are, cautiously optimistic about some of his takes, right? He's sounding optimistic. He's sounding very confident that this is doable. However, you're aware of the stumbling blocks. There are so many things within his control. There are so many more things outside his sphere of control. He talks about regional collaboration, and we do know at the moment we don't have the best political relationship with some of our neighbors, right? How achievable are some of the ideas that he's espousing, especially when you talk about border control and management, because that's something that Nigeria alone cannot achieve?
Okay, you're very correct that some of the things he said are quite germane. Now, I want to first start by also stating my view on the schools before I come to this issue. Besides the use of technology, which this one is also, I think I'm of the belief that when you look at the number of schools, there are so many. So if you are to fence them, it's capital intensive. So based on that, I'm also of the belief that in the schools that we have, there is one other way we can be able to make sure that some of these kidnappings do not happen. We should think of, beside, if there is a possibility of getting some CCTVs in some of the schools that are quite isolated on their gates and get them to be on 24 hours, government can be able to do that. We should also think of having high-sounding alarms. A chip does not like an alarm. All the schools should have high-sounding alarms that can be able to be triggered once the school is approached. You know, thieves don't like alarms. Now, you're very correct that currently we don't have a very good relationship with some of our neighbors, especially looking at the fact that on some of our neighbors, they actually have military governments. So I believe that currently, since the government is trying to appoint ambassadors, I think is one of the ways in which they can be able to strengthen the relationship between us and our neighbors. I'm sure the first places we should think of sending ambassadors should be our neighbors, because we need their support, we need their cooperation. So to me, since him as a person, because there are actually several layers of cooperation between us and our neighbors. We have the Committee of Chief of Defense Staffs, of which, and the Committee of Ministers, the Committee of Houses of Assembly or Parliaments. So through all these things, these are the areas they can be able to actually sell their point. Because I can tell you that insecurity bothers each and every one of us, and all of us want to be safe. And one of the ways in which we can be safe is to make sure that our borders are secured. Right. However, despite all this, I used to tell people that no matter what you do, one of the key impediments to this is the fact that we don't have, some of our officials don't have the love of this country at heart. We have so many bad eggs in some of these border areas and in some of these uniform services. And some of their actions or inactions contribute directly to some of the negative impact that is affecting the country.
He talked about investigations, retroactively looking back at past incidents, the most recent ones being the killing of the Brigadier General in Borno State, as well as the kidnappings in Maga and Kebbi. What can we expect from that? Because we do know that the Nigerian Armed Forces itself has its own internal mechanism of investigating situations like that. Not sure whether the ministry is taking the lead on that, but it does have some sort of supervisory role to play there. Is this a step in the right direction, you think?
Yeah, certainly. Even me, I followed closely what happened in Maga. It is quite disturbing for us to hear that the governor received an intelligence report that the school was going to be attacked and the students were going to be kidnapped. In a proactive manner, he actually informed the security agencies, and based on that, some military personnel were deployed to the school to enhance security and provide safety to the students. It is so sad for us to hear that a few hours before the bandits struck and kidnapped the students, the soldiers that were stationed in the school left the place. To me, I believe and I support the idea that a thorough investigation should be done, and whoever is found to be responsible for that should be made to pay for it. And I would like to see that whatever it is, let the people be made aware as to what are the outcomes of the investigations. Secondly, on the issue of General Uba, it's actually very sad and quite unfortunate for us to have actually lost an officer of that caliber, somebody who has risen to the rank of Brigadier General. This is why I told you that it's so sad. I could remember vividly that while I was in army quarters so many years ago, there was a time when they came from the office of the National Security Advisor and they intended to buy a surveillance camera that could be used by troops when they are traveling or when they are going on patrol. Another time, what the Bendo stated was that the camera had the capacity to actually, you could be able to see up to 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers ahead. So when it was brought to our own office then, we actually sent it to the field. And we asked those at the field to use it and then get a feedback for us. And the feedback we got was not encouraging, because they made us to know that that camera was actually a line of sight equipment. That means if there is an intervening terrain,
you cannot see beyond
you
that.
cannot see beyond that. And not only that, it does not actually reach up to 10 kilometers or so. So, and since that time, I think the whole idea disappeared. Not only, and after that, again, there was also a time when a company came and actually brought a balloon. That balloon could be used for surveillance. You can be able to just fire it. When you fire it, it can be able to scan the environment, and it can give you live pictures of what is happening. And with that one, it can be able to assist the commanders when they are moving in hostile environments. But nothing was done. I don't know. So these are some of the issues.
And do you think his presence in the government right now, in the Federal Executive Council, will change that? Because, as we did say, there are some issues that are just systemic. It precedes even the Tinubu administration. When it comes to our defense spending, there are a lot of question marks about whether we're spending enough to guarantee the safety and security of lives and property, considering not just the land mass, but also the population of Nigeria, its position, the economic resources, and how, as the soon-to-be minister is saying, there's a lot of appetite by terrorist groups to come to Nigeria because they believe that there is a lot to exploit here, security-wise and also economically. Give me a sense of whether it's a matter of making the right argument, or if this is largely just about political will, because there's also a lot of question about whether this government or past governments have the political will to do the needful.
Yeah, very correct that I think throughout my years of service, even after this problem started in 2009, I am sure I have been in so many teams, and I was aware of so many requests. There has to be some shopping list. These are the things we require here and there and there. And you could see that after a lot of this and that, later on, because we are still operating under an envelope system. That means once they say this is your budget, you operate within that. And I would believe that looking at the enormity of the security challenges we're facing in the country, I think we should operate outside the budget. That means the government should be able to have the will, the political will, to ensure that most of the things we require to secure Nigerians is provided. And this is why I can tell you that, this is why when we started speaking about the satellite, I can tell you that we don't have a satellite, and satellites are quite expensive. If you are going to have a military-grade satellite, you need nothing less than $300 million or more to get one. That is only to get one. That is the spy, military spy. Then to be able to even get a station, you need a heavy machine to launch it, and all these things cost a lot of money. And you know, because what we have now currently, the Nigeria Sat1, Sat2, and Sat-X, all of them, these are actually agricultural and other and communication satellites that don't actually, they are not military grade satellites. And so these are some of the impediments. And I can tell you that if you can be able to have surveillance, reconnaissance, and intelligence, I think the war will be over.
Knowing what you know about how expensive military equipments are, which the former CDS in his screening session also doubled down on, you consider this year's budget, especially to the Ministry of Defense. The proposal had at the initial submission 2.51 trillion naira. After the National Assembly engagement, it was adjusted downward to 2.49 trillion naira. From your understanding of how other countries are spending massively on defense, in anticipation of future threats, as well as existing ones that they're dealing with, are we spending as much as we should?
I think we are not. because I don't want to compare us with America, but imagine America spending 900 billion US dollars on defense spending alone. And when you convert 2 trillion, it's not up to 1 billion. You know, $1 billion. So the question is that I'm of the belief that Nigeria as a country, I don't want to tell you what I know, but I have told you that I have been an officer for 35 years in the army. I happen to be an army officer, and throughout my entire service years, I met Vickers, and when I was leaving, it was just before I left that we had the T-74. In other words, Nigeria as a country, we don't buy equipment yearly. It's not in our budget, and it shouldn't be so.
I mean, so what is this 2.49 trillion naira for then?
Good. You see, this is why by the time you go and check, I have told you repeatedly that this 2.1 trillion you look at, first of all, we had 10, now we have 11 agencies that get money from there. You speak of the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Defense Headquarters, the Ministry of Defense, Armed Forces Staff College, National Defense College, Space Agency. You speak of Military Pension Board and all this. And by the time you look at the Army, if they say they give us the chunk of it, you could see that by the time you look at how much is salary, how much is
They say much of that money is going to recurrent.
Yes, much of it goes to recurrent. This is why I can take you back to during Jonathan's era, when even during Buhari's era, where they approved $1 billion US dollars for purchase of equipment, and that money, if you know that 500 of it went to the purchase of Super Tucanos, 12 of them. The other 500 million was used for the Army and the Navy. And the Army got at least $350-something million. And when you look at that, by the time you look at when it is shared into, and that is why they are able to buy some equipment, which were not many. So I'm of the view that let the National Assembly, they should look at it, that every year. Because if you look at the funding for the Army, by the time they look at salary, they now look at even purchase of weapons. You see that the amount purchase of ammunition is there, purchase of weapons, purchase of pole, vehicles, and all these enablers, and then conduct of operations. Looking at the number of personnel that we have in the field, the money is big, and I think this is why even us, when we were there, you could see that they are just managing. And I think we should do better as a country.
There's always been this concern that the bandits, the terrorists are, in a sense, if you consider the ratio, are outspending Nigeria when it comes to armament. Because you see them every now and then with RPGs, they are able to expend ammunition. Because when they kidnap, whenever they ransom communities, as is evidenced by some of the viral clips that we've seen, they go especially to get more weaponry. When it comes to battlefield deployments, do you think that they're trying to match Nigeria's armed forces fire for fire in that sense?
You cannot compare the Nigerian armed forces to the bandits. Nigerian armed forces is far bigger than them. However, I want to tell you that what they do is simple. All of them, in other words, they can they group to go and attack. The Nigerian army cannot come out. The whole of the army. You can't mobilize the army. It's so big. So the question is that, and this is why, is
that more reason why, sorry for the interruption, is that the more reason why many people believe that we should consolidate? Because we have well over 32 theaters of operation, and that just spreads the Nigerian army too thin to actually have the kind of effect Nigerians expect it to have.
Well, this is, even me of the view that there is need for the level of concentration. In the principles of war, concentration, flexibility, and so many things they are part of the principles of war. Concentration is one of them. And even me, I'm of the view that there is need for us to actually face some of these operations. That means we should be able to concentrate in some and pay less attention to some, so that we can be able to clear it. For instance, I'm of the view that why can't you concentrate all our troops, equipment, and what have you in the northeast, clear it. Then later we'll come to the northwest, clear it, instead of staying for too long. Because what people don't know is that conducting operations are very, very expensive. This is why most of the time we're in the defense, because if you want to go to conduct an operation, it's quite expensive. Number one, you need there is need for 3-to-1 superiority. That means you are going to attack somebody. If they are 100, you must be 300. That means you must be 300 in terms of equipment. Even what they, you should know what they have. So
outman them, outpower them. Right?
Yes, and everything. So I believe also that there is need for us to actually face the operations we are conducting currently. In other words, instead of us being thin everywhere, why not concentrate in some areas, finish with them, and then continue to concentrate. I think I am also of that opinion, and I think when I was in Army headquarters, it has always been my view.
And talk to me about the morale, especially when it comes to leadership. You earlier on talked about something that I didn't want us to double down on, but leadership is very key, especially for uniformed personnel. What is the feeling like when you have someone who has served in that position? What signal, what effect does it have morale-wise on the armed forces itself?
This is why I say it's everybody is happy in the army, because he knows our cries, he knows our deficiencies, he knows our problems. And I can tell you that he's an insider, he's part of, we're a family in the army. So having one of us being a Minister of Defense is relishing. It's something that makes, and I can tell you that this will actually increase the morale, improve the fighting efficiency, and will enhance the motivation of our troops in the battle line, because we all know that this is somebody who knows where it pinches us. He knows all the problems facing the army because he has been part of it. He knows the problems. And not only that, he personally knows so many. Because like the former minister, I can't call it, how many does he know? But he knows hundreds of officers and soldiers because he has served in so many places, who he can call directly, who he can relate with, and he has served in so many barracks. And he has actually grown from a lieutenant up to a full general. He has served in so many barracks and held so many appointments. And in each appointment, in each barracks, wherever, he attended so many courses. And each places you go, you become families. He has met so many people that he's relating to. And I think there is this connection between him and them. And I think because so many soldiers have served under him, and don't be surprised, even people in the Northeast have started calling him, because you have a driver, you are orderly, you are staff in the office, you are PA, who are all still serving. And some of these things are some of the ways he can be able to get additional information, which put him at an age to somebody who's outside the system serving in that capacity.
Right. And let's talk about this growing call for a need to professionalize that role, the position of Minister of Defense. In so many countries, you realize that, listen, this is an exclusive position for people with combat experience, who have served, who understand what is at stake, right? But in Nigeria, we've seen civilians, we've seen former governors, former deputy governors, former bankers, former businessmen take up this particular position. You did talk about some amendment that would allow some sort of channeling directly with the service chiefs or the armed forces itself. Do you think that this is what Nigeria needs, especially in this day and age, because of what we're dealing with, that this should be an exclusive position for people who actually have something to give because of their years of service? You
see, over the years, we have actually done a lot about security sector reform. And one of the areas that needs to be reformed is the Ministry of Defense. If you check in what happens in other climes, you could see that in the Ministry of Defense, for instance, Director Army, in those countries, somebody like Director Army should be somebody who served in the Army. Somebody who's Director Air Force should be somebody who served in the Air Force, Director Navy. But here, the office of the head of civil service posts some people there. And there were so many attempts to actually reform the Ministry of Defense to make sure that some of the posts are actually being taken by persons who have retired from the army. If you go to, for instance, we have actually had some engagement with persons in the Ministry of Defense in the UK. And there, in fact, it's through their ties that they used to know whether this is a retired officer or a civilian. So most of the people that are working there are actually retired personnel. So they are coming with some level of knowledge, experience, and exposure. Whereas here you just have people who have never worked, who don't know anything about the army. You know, I have met so many who tell you that he's director army, and he doesn't know anything about the army. And this is why you could see that when it comes to procurement, some of these things they don't know our requirements, and some of them don't engage the end users before they come up with what needs to be. Because we have a way of hiding what is happening. There were some instances where you should be able to, where we in the army were trying to know what is Ministry of Defense asking for us, you know? And it's because of this issue of the fact that the Ministry of Defense is not reformed. So I believe that it will be good if we should be able to say that the Minister of Defense should be a retired military, then some of the key offices in the Ministry of Defense should be manned at least by persons that have military knowledge. I think that will add value.
Just to double down on that point, there are a lot of people who still believe that, listen, it is symbolic, it may be somewhat instrumental in the management of the security challenge that Nigeria is dealing with, but systematically the ministry is not positioned in such a way that his impact could come to bear, so much so that Nigerians would appreciate why he is there.
Well, I agree with you that currently, as I said, the Minister of Defense is like a manager, an administrator. His name is not there when it comes to the chain of command, because it is from the president to the service chiefs. That means the CDS and the minister, they are not in the chain of command. But I think this is something that all of us think needs to change. Because I think you could see that even recently, I'm sure you saw the president having meeting with service chiefs in his own office, you know, and the Minister of Defense was not there. So in such an instance, that means he will just give them orders directly. Well, as the commander-in-chief, he can be able to call anybody, and he can give orders to anybody he so wishes, because he is the commander-in-chief, you know, and everybody is at his beck and call.
And do you expect him to redefine this role, even with the limited constitutional powers that he may have?
This is why all this depends on the president, because if the president wants to deal directly with him other than with the service chiefs, that will be fine. But if the president decides to still be dealing directly with the service chiefs and having the Minister of Defense as somebody who is just an administrator, who is just a manager, then you know,
so you don't think he's going to end up being a spectator in government?
Well, you see, knowing his versatility, knowing the fact that he's somebody who is very versatile, who is quite knowledgeable, and who shows he's a natural leader. He has that leadership capacity. So I'm sure he should be able to, he's going to penetrate the political cycle and make himself relevant.
You talk about how popular this decision is within the rank and file of people still serving, people outside of service who say, listen, square peg in a square hole, right? Online, Nigerians are also giving their take, and he understands that, because he said the outpouring of support that he has seen since his announcement was made is something that he doesn't take for granted, and he hopes that he doesn't fail Nigerians in delivering that. But there's also another question which brings into the conversation the current Minister of State. And you've talked about how civilians have no idea what to do when they're in that position. Some are calling for the scrapping, because the Minister of State for Defense, the former governor of Zamfara State, has now been rendered redundant, so to say, quote unquote. I mean, I reckon there is very little he can share in terms of actionable intelligence on what the new Minister of Defense needs to do. What do you think about that? Do you think he needs help from someone like Matole, for instance, as Minister of State?
You see, this is why that is actually a political question. However, by my own opinion, I'm of the view that, like Metaole, he has actually come into the position not based on his knowledge or competence, but just as a way of political patronage. And to me, right from the word go, I was actually, and this is somebody who actually didn't do well as a governor, and then he is elevated into a minister. So, and even as a minister, I don't think he has, because when I look at his presentations and his interactions and even his interviews, I didn't really see somebody who has grasped what military exercises and operations are. So I'm of the view that he doesn't have anything actually to tell General Musa that will add value. But being it's only the president that will determine whether he will continue to remain or otherwise.
And we talked about some of the gaps, some of the hurdles structurally that the ministry has to deal with because of its limited powers or even powers that don't exist. Symbolically, it's supposed to be the one administering defense, but we all know realistically the service chiefs answers to the president, and there are other direct channels with which the armed forces could actually get some sort of facilitation. There are some people who have put this idea forward about the need to amend the Armed Forces Act itself, put some level of control under the Ministry of Defense, allow them to take the lead in so many areas, for instance. I know the president is the commander-in-chief, but we all know that not all presidents are going to be some sort of individual that has an understanding of what, yes, he can green light and delegate powers, but you need people who actually know what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. What do you expect to happen in the next couple of weeks and months? Because there is this, Nigeria is pressed for time. Internationally, there's the pressure from the US. I mean, they just announced visa ban for government officials that they believe are either complicit or not against the backdrop of this alleged Christian genocide. How fast do you expect this government to act to put Major General Christopher Musa in a position where he can actually deliver on all the promises that he has made to Nigerians today?
Okay, number one is the fact that on the issue of the Armed Forces Act, even me, I have the view that the Armed Forces Act is due for review. And you should know that that is actually the work of the parliament, because even us now, operationally, there are so many operational impediments. When after the return to civil law, the Armed Forces Act was reviewed, and in the review, they actually removed some aspects of the laws. For instance, field court martial was removed from Armed Forces Act. And so my belief is that I just hope that General Musa will assemble his legal team to look at the Armed Forces Act and see how they can be able to tinker with it. And if they tinker with it, I'm sure they should send it to the National Assembly. And I pray that National Assembly will try to do the needful by doing a review and getting it done, because even the first time they did that, it took so many years. Now on the issue of, you're correct that he's actually coming with a lot of hope. Nigerians are happy, in the military we're also happy. Everybody is quite happy that we're having somebody and we have a very big problem and want that problem to be solved. So my prayer is that I just expect that he should work aggressively. He should be seen to be everywhere, and he should be able to see how he can convince the government to provide what is required, so that we should be able to see him scoring goals or achieving some of the goals he has set for himself. But I can tell you that as he has said, he needs the executive and the National Assembly to give him all the support, because some of the key things that are actually bedeviling us, or that had made it impossible for us to achieve much more than we have achieved, has to do with the lack of inadequate equipment, lack of enough manpower, and so many other things like that. And I think if those things can be addressed, I'm sure we can be able to to smile.
Right.
Nigeria could be quite safer.
Right, all right. And on that particular positive note, we're going to have to anchor the conversation there. Major General Muhammed, retired. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I appreciate you very much for the analysis.
Thank you very much.
Right.
I appreciate you.
And this is where we wrap things up for tonight's edition of the program. Daily Politics returns tomorrow live at 8 p.m. I'm Abdullahi Ahmed. From myself and the rest of the team, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.